Hi, this is Gayle from BERNINA of Naperville, and welcome to our Footloose Friday, which is all about living on the edge. Well, what do I mean by that? I mean, we're going to use a number two or a number 2A overlock foot that is normally done for seam finishing or knit seams and things like that. I'm going to take you through that, but I'm also going to show you a fun project that I learned many years ago from a book by Mary Lou Knowles, and that's Charted Needlework by Machine. Now, some of us probably already know that charted needlework is basically counted cross stitch, or in some cases, it's a hand painted canvas that's done for needlepoint. There's all different kinds of ways to transfer, like lettering, just patterns, things like that, and then stitch them out by hand. But using our number 2 or 2A foot with that little pin in it gives our stitching just enough loft on our machine to not tunnel and to make it look like it was done by hand. So we're going to make the super cutest little Swiss patch, but we got to see how to get there and our supplies. So Footloose Friday, you can purchase right at BERNINAofNaperville.com. Just search Footloose Friday, and we've got two choices. We've got our 2024 collection, and we've got our current 2025 collection. Now, of course, it's 2025, and the new ones live in that item, right? But when you sign up for Footloose Friday, you're going to be spending $15, and it gets you more than just this free video that you're seeing. We're going to give you a discount on our number 2 or our number 2A feet, and we're going to show you a lot of other useful links and things like that, plus the settings and everything that you need to make our samples. So hopefully you will enjoy that, and hey, the 15 bucks is worth it just for the discount on the feet. So let's roll up our sleeves and look at this presentation deck.
So here is the presentation deck that you're going to get. And basically, I kind of cover all of the techniques that you're going to see me go through. And this month, it's all about the Bernina number 2 and number 2A overlock foot, like I mentioned. Now, this project, or this foot rather, is suitable for any Bernina machine. I mean, the number 2 feet have been coming with Bernina since the beginning of time. And the absolute practical use of this foot is for seaming knits and saving raw edges. We also can do that in home deck with some of the upholstery weight fabrics and curtain weight fabrics. Of course, we can also use this with woven, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. But our little fun project this month is our cute little patch, our Swiss flag patch, where we used charted needlework. Now, if you order Footloose Friday from us, you're going to get this presentation deck automatically sent to you where a link to the video lives. So in case you stumbled upon this video on YouTube and then you don't know how to get back to it, we put the link to the video right here. Now, the anatomy of the overlock foot. And like I mentioned, there are two different kinds. So let's go over to the design table and kind of give you a little up close and personal view of these feet. Let's have a look at foot number 2 and foot number 2A. Now, these feet do exactly the same thing. The only difference that you're going to see is that foot 2A is a wee bit wider at that toe that sticks out. 2A is the one with my right hand here. And it's just a wee bit longer by like an eighth of an inch. So this is the foot that's used on the machines that do the 9 millimeter wide stitching. And I'm going to use this today on my Bernina 990. I also have a Bernina number 2 overlock foot, and this one is suitable without the alpha after it. The regular 2 is suitable for machines that I'll be using today, like my Bernina 475 that does the 5.5 millimeter stitching. So, what does it mean to have an overlock foot? Does this mean that these feet can replace a serger? Well, not really. Like everything, there's always a machine that can do a job better. But if you are just doing some simple sewing and you want to finish the edges of something, you would use a foot like this. Now, what makes this foot special is that if we look under the foot here, you'll see, I'm going to use my little tweezers here to kind of show this. There is a little tongue or a little pin on this foot, and what that pin is designed to do is give your stitches loft so they don't squeeze or tunnel the edges of the fabric. And then what happens is you're going to ride your fabric kind of to the edge of the foot right here. And then as you stitch, that pin prevents the squeezing of the edge, and you'll have a nice flat overcast edge of one layer of fabric or a very flat overcast edge of two layers of fabric. And this is suitable for knits and for wovens. And you can see here on our 2A that the foot is designed just the same way with the pin under the foot that you can see there. These feet are traditionally used with an overlock stitch, and there's several on the Berninas. You know, obviously a zigzag stitch is an overlock stitch. So let's use some linen here. And I'm going to use the linen. I'm just going to take one layer of linen and another single layer of linen. And we're going to do an overcast edge on our Bernina 475 to save the edges here. You know, you would do this if you're making a garment, but you could also do this just in case you are a fabric washer and you want to wash your fabric and you don't want it to unravel on you in the wash. So let's go over to the 475 and we're going to experiment with a couple of stitches and how we would do this.
So here's our foot on the machine. I'm using white thread to contrast with our blue fabric, just so that you can see it a little bit better. And I have a zigzag selected. It's set at 3.6 with a stitch length of 1.5. So I'm gonna just go with a single layer, lowering my presser foot. And as you can see, when my needle swings over the edge, I want that needle to clear that pin and the fabric. I'm also going to move my needle position over 5 clicks to the right. And now if you really look at my stitching here, I am lining my fabric right up with that little bend of the foot. And this is a really narrow zigzag. Now we can see that flat little stitch, right? So that was a zigzag. Now there might be an opportunity where you want to make the stitch a little bit wider. I'm going to go up to about 4.4, or why the heck, let's do 4.5, right? And I'm going to put my foot down. There we go. And now we can see our edge. Okay, so there is a seam with overcast edges with the simple zigzag stitch that we all have on our machines. So let's just see what it's like using a different overcast stitch. And there's several on our 475. There's even more on our 990, of course. One that's on our 475 that I like to use often is the number 10 stitch. Now this one is 5.5 millimeters wide by 2 millimeters long, but I am going to just narrow this for our linen, and I'm going to go to 4.5, And then I'm going to just make it about 1.85 in length. But the same concept applies. We're going to line this piece up to the edge like this. And we're going to have it so our needle will just be going off the edge of that pin and off the edge of our fabric. And now that did yield us a little bit of a roll, but I kind of like it for this application. Let's do the other side over on our 990. Okay, for this application, I have some teal thread here. Hopefully you'll still be able to see it. And I'm using stitch number 35 on the 990 with a needle position to the left of -1 and a stitch width of 5.5. So I'm going to line this up right on the edge of my fabric, that little pin into place just like so. And I'm just starting a little bit away from the edge, but you can start right on the edge. And for all of these test sews, I do have a size 80 microtex needle in there. So we did side 1, and now we're going to go down side 2 here. Once again, same thing. Don't fret if you're not starting right on the edge, but you can stitch on the edge like so. And you're going to want to put your finger just on the thread to get started. I've tried to zoom in here for you so you can see exactly what's going on. So now I'm just going to cut this and then stitch it together so you can see how the seams would look once they're sewn together. Now let's talk about the way that I adjusted some of these stitches. So this is one that I chose, and then this is another one. Now see how this is yellow? That's something that I made an adjustment on. So if I press clear, this is what it shows up like when I pick this stitch and my number to a foot. This is only with the machines that have the foot recognition. So the 475 that I was using earlier, I'm kind of like on my own to figure out and test, right? But the 990 and the machines that have the presser foot recognition, and you can see the little preview of the foot here, give us a lot more flexibility in how we're gonna adjust the stitches. So I made it narrower, and then I played around with moving my needle position. And now in this case, I'm 4 needle clicks to the left, and I'm at 5.1 on my stitch width. So there's more than one way to adjust these stitches. You just want to adjust them so that the stitch isn't red, because if it's red, that means that something is in the no-sew zone, okay? So let's have a look at this one. Once again, I'm lining this up just like our other items. And now we can see what that one looks like. Let's look at this one in contrast to our other. And I may have fed too much fabric through, so that's why we have those little whiskers there. But lots of choices for you to give this a try. Now, this could also be a seam or a raw edge finish if you were to do like a blind hem stitch or something like that, where you need to make sure that, you know, like your trousers or whatever wouldn't unravel. Okay, so this is great, but we also have an option for seaming knits. So for a knit, there is a stitch. This is a lightweight jersey. You know, this is super cute little speckly knit here. And there is a jersey stitch at stitch number 3. You literally have to do nothing to this stitch. So we're going to line this up, and you'll notice on your needle plate that we have a line here and a line here. This line that's a little bit further back from where the needle starts is where I like to start when I'm seaming a knit. And so I'm going to do the same thing here where I'm going to have this knit starting on that second line back, but now my little edge of my knit is just poking out here just a little bit. And now we know that in our garment sewing that apparel is a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, but with knits it's typically 1/4 of an inch. So this is about 1/4 of an inch seam. And once again, we're using this to prevent the fabric from unraveling, but we're also doing this to actually seam the knit as well, because this stitch will have a little bit of stretch because of that little zigzag maneuver. And so there is our simple little knit seam that has some stretch. And when we go to open it up, it's seamed nicely. We can press it to the side and we have an overcast seam. Let's do it with a different stitch. This time I'm using stitch number 10 with 5.5 millimeter stitch width. Nothing has been adjusted. It's all the default settings. I'm going to put my fabric back a little bit further at that second line there, and now lowering my foot, and now we're going to stitch. Got a lot more stretch. This would be suitable. We went along the least stretchy part of the knit here, but this one would have been suitable to go down that real stretchy part of the knit as well. So then when we open this up, we've got a nice seam that's overcast.
Now, let's have a little bit of fun. I did this little red cross. There's white and there's red, and it really looks like needlepoint. And this is called charted needlework. And it's called charted needlework because you basically get like a pattern and you chart it out. So here's a little doodle that I made. The Red Cross is a little bit easier because we don't have as many stop and starts all over the place like this, but basically we can use all sorts of stitches for this. And for those of you that are very new at this, I recommend the Zigzag Satin Stitch. Case closed. It's the easiest one because you don't have to anticipate a pattern repetition landing in a certain spot each time, because then that makes it easy to get off your charted path here. So one of my favorite stitches is the zigzag stitch for this. And if you look here, this fabric that I have this on is called Aida cloth. And it's this stuff here. This is 14 squares per inch. They also make it in 28 squares per inch. That's practically threads. And then this is one of the easier ones. If you want to not, stitch forever, this is 6 stitches per inch. And so that's what I've done on this piece here. So you can cover more territory by stitching less in this regards, but I think we get a more needlepoint kind of look if we go for the 14 count cloth. Now, on the back side, I use a peel and stick or a stable stick cutaway stabilizer, which is what I have right here. So we just are going to simply peel this off and place it on the back. Now, this pattern has been transferred onto the back of this cloth with my water-soluble blue pen. So once this is washed, that will go away. I think the blue shows up a little bit better for the camera than some of the other pens that I've used, but I also quite often will use a heat vanishing pen for this so that I don't have to wash anything. I can just go over to the iron, press it, and the heat vanishing stuff dissolves. So I do a lot of tests when I do this. And you might ask, well, why aren't you using your open toe foot? And here are the open toe feet for my 990, right? I've got the 20C and the 20D. We could. The thing of it is, it's that little pin that's under the foot there is going to allow me to get this hand stitch look with this. And so on the wider one, it's not that important, but on this tiny little one, it is. And this, like I said, it's my favorite to do these little small ones, but I did draft out some options here. So let's talk about the thread that you're seeing here. So this thread on top is a 12 weight cotton thread. It's an Aurifil 12 weight thread. And this is it. It's much thicker. A lot of the cross stitchers like this, 2 strands is like, you know, 4 strands of DMC floss, right? So using that and then having a bobbin wound of our regular 50 or 60 weight thread. And when you're using this thread, please make sure that you use a top stitch size 100 needle. The eye is a little bit larger so that the thicker thread can go through it, and the shaft is a little bit thicker to make a bigger hole. We also want to use a manual needle threader for this because I don't want to break my needle threaders, right? So this is the needle threader that comes with your B990 and your L890, but it's available to purchase for the other models. So I recommend that. So in this example here, this was truly me testing out the 6 count Aida cloth. I used a 50 weight Aurifil for that green, and it was just very anemic looking. Then when I was just kind of testing out how I'm going to do my little squares here, I used the red heavyweight and it fills in much better. This is also the red heavyweight here on this piece. And this work was done with red and white heavier weight thread here. So I like to do, when I do my satin stitching, I like to do some rows and see how it works together. Like if I line it up starting with this hole and then it straddles over one of the little grids, and the same on the other side. So I just test it a couple times, test it for the density, test it for all of those things before I start working on my precious. Now, another thing that we need to talk about for this is when we do the zigzag stitch, you do not be tempted by going down, then rotating and coming back up. We always want to go in the same direction. So I'm making a little Swiss cross here. And in this case, I mark the top so I know each time where I'm going to be starting. And that's pretty much it. So let's go over to our 990. Even though we can do this, I started this on the Bernina 475, but I want to show you on the 990 a couple of little tools that can really help us see where we're going. And of course, that's the laser and the camera. And those of you that have had your eye on a pro, don't forget that the new 735 Pro, the 770 Quilters Edition Pro, have the laser in sewing mode and embroidery mode. It's really cool, but only the 990 has the camera.
My stitch is a number 2 zigzag stitch. The stitch width is 2.1. The stitch length is 0.45. And the needle position is 3 clicks to the right. And there's no laser. This is my 475. So I have to just do my best here to start in the hole. And you can see it going right into that hole like that, right? So then we're gonna lower our presser foot and we're gonna stitch. And if you have to slow your speed down, you can do that. And there I am at the end. So now I'm gonna lift my presser foot, lift my needle, slide off of the pin, then I'm gonna move this up, and now my needle is on the right side, so I'm going to go down into the hole of that piece there. And now, using my tweezers, I'm going to hide this little thread, that little jump stitch, under. So let's just move that over somewhere. We're just going to overstitch this. And now that pin is getting lined up down that new row. Okay, now we're gonna lift the foot again, pull it off the pin, and move this guy over. And now we're gonna lower our hand wheel or flywheel, and there it is in the hole again. And now we're gonna lower our foot, move this guy aside. There we go. And now this time our pin is lined up with that row or column, however you need to think about it. Sorry for bumping. So my needle is on the right-hand side now. And however you want to deal with moving your little loopy-whoopy around, that's fine. There we go. And one more. Now, I might have oversewn a little bit on these, but I can fix that when we go in and we do our white. And notice that I always started at the top each time. So now we can trim like so, because I'm going to go around with a finishing satin stitch around this. And then I would start up here. Now, because this has kind of defined areas, I would recommend, please, don't try to do your 6 little squares here, then hop over and do your 6 little squares there. You want to just keep going back and forth like this so that you cover the whole area. It's much easier. So I'm going to finish up this red on my 475, and then we'll do the white on our 990. So let's get to it here. Okay, so laser on and camera on. And see how it shows up there. It just kind of gives us a little extra vision here. And if we look down here at my work, we can see exactly where I'm going to need to start and stop and get that laser right in the holes of the Aida cloth. See how easy that is? Just like that. I'm going to hold my thread So I'm just going to start sewing. And I am going to use my tweezers to kind of fish my thread under the foot like so. And now, just like I did before, we're going to lift and bring that stitching up to the next hole. Now, at this point, we can cut. And if we have any little threads to trim in between, we can, because they're stitched down. So the needle, the laser is seen better when the foot is in the highest position and the needle is on the left side. So if you press pattern begin on your machine, it will move that needle right into position.
Okay, because I'm making a little patch, I'm going to cut this right one box away from the edge of this little guy here.
Now, my last piece is going to be a little satin stitch around the edge of my work. And I am going to widen my stitch to about 2.9 because I want it to go off the edge of my stitching. Raise the needle, raise the foot, turn around, start again. It's a little bit easier to do it off the edge like this. There we go. And I'm just going to switch to a straight stitch to knot. So there's our little patch. Kind of has a little chenille look to it. Okay, so here is our charted needlework for this design that I drew, right? So this one is a little bit fun because we can kind of travel a little bit as we do these. So once again, I'm going to get this lined up in one of my holes, and then we're just simply going to stitch. And this is at 5.0 width. I'm going to do one more stitch, lift up the presser foot, slide it off, and now I'm going to come over to that hole just there. And now we're going to do this one. And now this time I'm going to lift, and I'm just going to bounce over to this one over here on this side over there, just kind of plotting a little path. And in this case, we're going to go here. Okay, down in that hole. And now I'm going to lift, come over here. We're going to have to go back and get one, no worries. And you see what I'm doing, I'm just hopping down my little path. And I was able to get quite a bit of that, right? So now if I want to kind of tie off my threads here, I'm pulling a little long tail, and I'm just going to pull long tails, and what's going to happen is I'll be able to pull those under and tie them off. But yeah, we're just going to do what you saw me do there all along this piece.
Okay, so these are all done with the Aida cloth, right? I call it Aida. How do you say it? Is it Aida or Ada? Let's find out. Google.
There are different pronunciations for this type of fabric or cloth. Ida, which is the name of an opera by Verdi, so that's the Italian pronunciation, Aida, or Ada, which is more the English pronunciation.
Well, I call it Aida because I had heard of the opera before I had heard of Ada cloth. Anyway, so great little example of doing this. We started and stopped. You saw me knot off, but this could be an alternative for you if you don't have an embroidery machine. This little patch was fun to make. I'm going to wiggle this onto, some Swiss things for our trip. And maybe you have like a little medical bag of Band-Aids or something you'd want to put the red cross on. I essentially use the cross shapes because they're an easier piece to get started. You can see it was a little bit more just more time consuming to do the ones where we stopped and started a lot. But what do you do if you don't want to buy Aida cloth? One option could be to draw the grid. Now, this is heat vanishing pen. My pen actually ran out of ink right here, so I had to switch to a red one. But this is an 1/8 of an inch grid. This is about similar to our 14 gauge cloth. If you consider those little notch, actually, this might be a little bit larger. This is about 3 millimeters between each one of these boxes, or about an 1/8 of an inch. So this is just a little bit larger than this one. Another thing that I thought of now, don't laugh at me, okay? But I have an embroidery machine, so I thought, why wouldn't I use a lacework fill that's adjusted just right? This is the same size as this grid, but this was stitched on white fabric that's got fusible woven on the back, and it already has its heavyweight cutaway stabilizer. So I could punch this with my hand stitching, and I could use this as a grid just like I used any of these examples. Now, that does defeat the purpose, ladies and gentlemen, don't you think? Because why wouldn't I just then plop in some cross stitches there or some other types of satin stitching? So it's up to you how you want to do this, but nonetheless, I think that the charted needlework is a fun little alternative project to a very practical foot that is normally used to save the edges of your fabric.
I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. I hope maybe you apply it to something. I think it could be really cute, making a border for a quilt label, a little patch for a jacket, or just playing around and having some fun. So once again, I just would like to thank you so much for watching and remind you to go over to our Bernina of Naperville YouTube channel, where we have almost or over 600 videos. And I would really like it if you could like, comment, and subscribe. Until then, have fun playing with your machine and happy sewing.